but we're here again with Dave Mustaine of the legendary Megadeth. Now, Dave, you're back with another album, Endgames. After 12 albums, it sounds to me like music is still coming as naturally as it ever has been to you. Is that the case? Is it still just as easy for you to write a riff?
Well, it's as fun, as far as being as easy. I think that when you've written so many riffs, you tend to forget, and just got to make sure you don't repeat yourself. There's a lot of bands that repeat themselves. I've got over 100 songs, and it's very possible with as many riffs are in each song that I've written a riff and showed up in a song. The funny thing is, like, Sean had submitted a song for the new record, and I was listening to it and I thought, wow, something sounds different. I don't like this song, and so I picked up my guitar and I figured out what it was. He had put one of the riffs that I'd written on Take No Prisoners in his song, and I said, dude, that riff's from Take No Prisoners. He goes, no, it's not. And I said, yes, it is. Listen. And he goes, oh, okay, well, maybe it is.
So, do you ever find, I mean, you've been around for more than 20 years now. Do you ever find that happening in other bands? Who might be doing it completely accidentally.
You mean copying me or copying themselves?
No, I mean, do you ever hear sort of a Megadeth riff in there, or an influence that's really obvious? Not to say they're intentionally doing it, but
no,
it might be the same.
I wouldn't say that, because I'll get scalded by everybody. He's such an arrogant asshole. Oh my God, I can't believe you said that. There's a lot of bands that repeat themselves. Are there bands that steal from us? They'd have to, because we stole from somebody else. The only guy that's ever said an original word in the universe is Adam. And as far as guitar is concerned, it all goes back to Robert Johnson. I mean, you take heavy metal, thrash came from heavy metal. You take rock and roll, well, heavy metal came from rock and roll. And what is rock and roll? It's a slang from the Negroes that were in America. That's what they called them back then. And it was a slang for having sex. They would rock and roll in bed. And they were saying that the music that Robert Johnson did was rocking and rolling. It was sexy. So it morphed into what commonly now is Megadeth, and it all goes back to the same nucleus.
Yeah, right.
So would someone have stolen me? Well, they would have to have, because it's just part of being a musician. You borrow.
And hopefully
it's only 12 notes anyways, man.
Exactly. Yeah, I suppose every combination has probably been done.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that there's probably a lick that I've done that has been from some classical artist somewhere, or there's been a chord progression I've done that some punker's written, but because my tastes are so extreme and bizarre, I don't think anybody would be able to really ascertain where all of the inspirations come from, because, I'll listen to stuff like Merciful Fate back in the day versus listening at the same period, I would be listening to Aztec Camera. I mean, who listens to that stuff? Who listens to both of those things? And there's a lot of really interesting stuff that inspires me musically. Watching people like George Benson play, seeing people like Ted Nugent play the same kind of guitar and how different it sounds. Watching people like Jeff Healey, who was a blind guy we lost recently, and guys like Jose Feliciano. I think Jose kind of took it easy. I think Jeff Healey kicks serious ass. It's so interesting when you're part of the music industry, what you look at. It's like these people who are coaches. They see things that we would never see.
So do you take influences like Jose Feliciano and George Benson and actually sort of learn from them, or is it just something that you listen to? But when you're writing an album, you'll listen to metal.
I listen to all kinds of stuff, and neither one of those gentlemen have influenced my guitar playing. George is definitely good enough, but it's not in the right vein. It's not in the right vein. It's not in coming from the right place either. And as far as Jose Feliciano is concerned, he's a classical flamenco style guitar player, so I'm sure that there's a lot of merit to what he does. But I never really got into the whole nylon string guitar. Acoustic guitar is so hard to play anyway, and nylon strings are probably the hardest because the guitar is very unforgiving. Most of the guitars that are made that have nylon strings on them are crap. The strings are about 2 inches off of the neck, and you need to use C clamps to even do a chord on there if your hands aren't like a fiddler crab, man. You'll never be able to hold on to that thing, you know.
But almost everyone starts learning guitar on those ridiculous guitars.
And that's why most people quit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the misconception, too, is that just because you can play guitar, that doesn't mean you're a musician. And just because you're a musician doesn't mean that, you know, you're in a band. You know, there's people who are in a band, and there's a couple guys who can play music, but they're not musicians. You know, and the one guy in the band that's a musician has to carry the weight of the guys who just know how to play music. You know what I mean? And you get in a situation like with us, where you've got so many people that are talented in so many different areas. It pretty much just really opens up the floodgate of what you can do. You know, talent-wise, how far can we go? How far can we push Chris? How fast can we make Sean and James play?
Do they? Do you drive them mad just sitting there in the rehearsal room saying, "Let's do faster, faster, faster"?
I don't think so, because James may not like it, because he's from an old school kind of approach. You know, kind of a more rock thing with his bass playing. You know, he played with Ozzy, he played with David Lee Roth, he played obviously with White Lion and stuff like that, which I think really helped him, because, you know, he's got credibility from doing stuff with Zach and the BLS, and he's also got the melody that came from working with White Lion. Now, I don't really admire his past in White Lion, because when I met my wife, she had a picture of that stupid band in her bedroom. And I felt like saying something to James when I first saw him. Well, if you weren't in White Lion, you'd be in the band, but since my wife likes you, you're out of here. No, but it's cool. We all came together for different reasons, and it works really well right now.
Lyrically, Megadeth have always had a bit of a political edge to it, and that hasn't really changed. Do you feel that, you know, in the last couple of years, or since your last track or before this, the world has changed a little bit? Has that really affected sort of the way you're writing songs now?
I don't think so. I think that the things that I've been talking about, it's current events. It's stuff that's happening. You know, stuff I talked about 20 years ago, it's happening. You know, and it's not like I predicted it. I just reported what I read. And I think that looking at the way, I mean, when I first started, there was a USSR. Now there's not. There was a wall. Now there's not. You know, there was communism. Well, there's still communism in China, and still, you know, factions of communism around, you know, Asia and so on. But it ain't like it used to be. So, and the rules of engagement have totally changed in war. You know, your great-grandfather fought with a gun and a bayonet. You know, your kids aren't even going to have to go into combat, because it's all going to be done by computer.
Yeah, right.
You know, we're using drone planes right now, and the super guns that we're making, they have these guns that will evaporate the flesh off of you. Now, who's going to want to mess around with a dude that has a gun like that? You know?
Well, I don't want to mess around with a guy just with a regular gun, but I think that one is...
That's scary. Yeah, and then they have these other things that are like sound guns that are just, will destroy you just because of the pulse of the sound. You know, these super guns that they have with really long barrels and huge caliber shells that come out of it are nothing compared to the modern army right now. You know, it's all going Star Wars.
And I think a lot of metal bands seem to sort of lyrically be driven from these big stories and big folklore and all of that. You know, it sounds like you are recognizing all of these, you know, almost sci-fi stories that are happening in the world around. I mean, is that the case? Do you sit there and watch the news and...
Yeah, I watch a lot of the news. I watch a lot of the news. I think that it's really important to look around where you're, you know, where you're coming from, where you're going. Or, you know, if you don't pay attention, you're gonna come back to the same place, and you know, you think you're going around in circles, and really you're not. You know, it's just part of the whole process. We've been here several times to Australia and seen some change, but not a lot. Not as compared to our country, because you know, I've been there my whole life. I've seen a lot of stuff there. You know, when I came here last time, I learned so much about the country, because you know, I was bringing Gigantor down here, and I really wanted to make this a territory that was going to be part of my business, and you know, go forward with a relationship with Gigantor and the Australian people. And that was really cool for me. You know, also when you're here, if you're going to do something like that, you need to kind of understand the people. You need to understand, what happens with the laws, and that kind of stuff. It's really consuming if you're just like a stoner and you're not paying attention in life, and you haven't studied in school and you have no education. The chances are that you're going to be able to conduct business at any kind of level, that you're going to be able to do anything significant in your life, or have any kind of impact on your culture or your surroundings. It's probably less than if you stayed in school and you keep working at things. If I wasn't a musician, I've already said that I would want to be a teacher, or I think it would be cool to be like a entertainment attorney to destroy people who hurt bands, and like Aaron Brockovich, but basically go after the music industry people who hurt bands. I think that would be really cool. Now, I don't want to make any enemies because I've got a lot of friends in the music industry, but it's the principle behind when you have a band and you start calling them product. They're people. I'm a person. I remember somebody from EMI in Germany called us product one time. And if it wasn't a woman, I would have punched her in the face. It was really, really insulting because we're people.
Yeah. But, I mean, by the same token, you were just talking about Gigantor and being a business there. I mean, your fans out there are people as well.
Yeah, but Gigantor itself is not the fans. Gigantor is a festival that comes and travels. So it's a traveling festival, therefore it's a business.
Yeah.
The people that come to see Gigantor are heavy metal fans that love guitar and know that they can count on me to bring them something that's going to be quality and it's not going to be super expensive, because I don't need their money, and I certainly don't want to make my career off of the efforts of other people. I'm pretty well established. I think my name's going to go down pretty well in the history of rock and roll and heavy metal, and when it comes down to being able to do something good for the bands, I think that's a really cool thing with Gigantor, because we've got a lot of bands we've taken out that would never have had the opportunity to stand on a stage that big.
And, I guess time will tell how well Gigantor's done down here. It did very well last time. Hopefully it will come back.
It will, but we had this opportunity to do this thing with Slayer, and then we're going back to Canada to do more with them, and then we're going out in the States with Machine Head for a month, and then taking the holidays off, and we're going to go back out for 2 more months right after that. And there's a lot. We have the next 18 months planned out for us. That's a lot of touring.
Yeah. Do you ever get sick of it?
Now, when you got a good record, if you got a record that's not being received very well, like we had a period where the music industry and the fans were just not aligning. The industry was telling us to do one thing, which was basically the boss, and the fans were saying something else, which was basically the customer. And I was put in such a terrible place there. I'd never wanted to quit Megadeth before, but that's why I did the MD45 project. I hated being in the band with those guys because it was all about songwriting and money and shares and percentages, and I want this and I want that, and it's like, you know what? You guys have completely lost sight of why we play music. We play music because we love it, okay? We don't have the same vision anymore. We don't have the same focus anymore. It's all about your songs. And you know what? You've already been told that EMI wants the record to be written 70% by me because your songs aren't any good. I didn't say that. EMI said that. My manager wrote a letter to Nick Menza and said, Nick, your songs are a dime a dozen, maybe a nickel. And I saw that and I was like, ooh, boy, how do you say something like that to somebody without, leaving a mark?
That's what managers are for.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have said it like that to Nick. Nick was one of those people who was very outspoken, and I think that was probably his downfall. He had told us he had cancer and he didn't, and it was sad because, granted, we didn't want him to have cancer. I love Nick, but he's in terrible shape right now, and I heard he just did a commercial. Sean just told me he did a commercial for a cymbal company, and he's like a shell of who he was.
Wow.
And I can remember when I went through my, years in the desert, on out on that drug-addicted island, and just all I lived for was to get loaded, and it's not who I am anymore. I look at some of my friends, and I look at their face, and it's like, wow. Some guy got in a plane with me 2 days ago that I hadn't seen in about 20 years. And I looked at him and I went, "Oh my God, is that?" It's me. I said, "Wow, you look different." I didn't want to say, "Wow, you look like an old dog turd." Where's your hair? I didn't want to say that, but
wow,
you just like, "Oh my gosh," because we're about the same age, and it looked like a prune, and he didn't have any hair, and what he did have was all going gray, and I was like, because all that time spending, laying on my back sleeping paid off because I don't look like that.
Endgames went to number 11 in Australia.
Yeah.
That must be a great feeling for you to still be able to have an album that's that popular on the other side of the world.
The cool thing is that United Abomination, since its release here, has only done about 11,000, and Endgame in the first 3 weeks already sold about 10,000 copies. So in 3 weeks, it's almost caught up its predecessor, and that's really exciting for us because right now in the music industry here, it's hard to sell 5,000 records, let alone 10. We're shooting hopefully for gold soon. If we have a chance, this is it.
Yeah, right.
And I think that the cool thing is we got banned down here a long time ago because Jeff Young was playing guitar for us, and we were all pretty messed up. Heroin was really prevalent, and Jeff ran out in Japan, so he wanted to go home. Now, when I ran out, I just drank, but he wanted to go home, and we canceled Australia.
Right.
Consequently, we stuck our head into a noose, and we didn't come back here for 10 years. When we did come back here, we had a different promoter. We started to make amends to the Australian audience for what had happened. It's a long way to come down here and to get people's hopes up and not come. That sucks, especially because I'm sure it happens a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of people that say they're coming and they change their mind. So I don't want to ever be like that again. So when we came down here, it was all about regaining the relationship with the Australian people. And the metal community here is very forgiving. I think if you're honest and you can say, "Hey, look, we made a mistake. I should have beat Jeff's butt and stuck him in a suitcase and went to Australia."
Yeah.
But at the time, there was just no reasoning with him. This is the same guy that called up my girlfriend and said, "I fantasize about having sex with you when I have sex with my girlfriend." And I went, "What did he say?" So I fired him on the spot for that. But, you got to ask yourself.
Not for the heroin addiction and going back
No,
to
this happened after it. Because, it was like the dust that accumulates makes mountains. And this thing became like Mount Everest. It got to the point where it was just like, no more. Because he opened up my suitcase one time and found this love letter from Doro that she sent me. And he was in love with Doro, and he goes, "I quit." And his guitar tech came up to me and goes, "Hey, I can play his stuff tonight. Don't worry, man." I said, "No, you can't." That stuff is so involved. And he goes, "Well, if it makes you feel any better, I've been spitting in his water bottle every night." And I went, because it was so disgusting to hear the guy do that.
Yeah.
But that's just life on the road in Megadeth, and we're having fun right now. I think that the success of Endgame is what it's all about for us right now.
Yeah, right. Well, Dave, it's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot.
You got it.